A bank was robbed with no witnesses. Its president vanished without a trace. When a body finally surfaced, the criminal investigation turned deadly serious. Federal agents descended on a small town suddenly gripped by fear and uncertainty. When the close-knit community of Knoll, Missouri, discovered their bank had been robbed, shock and disbelief swept through the streets. When the bank president turned up missing, outrage followed. But nothing was as it first appeared. As clues surfaced, the facts proved far more terrible than anyone could have imagined. Harlan Beck, former head of the FBI's New York office, later described how the Knoll bank robbery became a case defined by intricate forensics and relentless determination. The Cowskin Bridge over Grand Lake in Oklahoma became the scene of something far more sinister one night. The lake, popular for fishing and boating, turned into the site of a gruesome, meticulously planned crime. A cold-blooded murder shattered the tranquility of the nearby town of Knoll, Missouri. Tucked in the southwest corner of Missouri and home to roughly 1,200 residents, Knoll prided itself on small-town charm and a low crime rate. One morning, Lorraine Bennett, a cashier at the State Bank of Knoll, arrived for work and found the front doors already unlocked. She assumed the bank president, Raymond Cole, had arrived early. As she walked through the building, however, she saw no one. Within moments, she realized the vault had been robbed. Knoll police and the McDonald County Sheriff responded to her call. Because the bank was insured by the FDIC, the FBI was also notified, and an agent was sent from the nearby Joplin office. The entire scene was meticulously photographed and dusted for prints. Investigators noticed the security camera had been spray-painted and shot out. Spent casings beneath it showed the robbers had used a .45 caliber handgun. They had made off with more than $71,000, including 320 pounds of quarters, dimes, and nickels. Strangely, more than $100,000 in bills remained behind in an unlocked drawer. Raymond Cole was one of only 4 bank employees with access to the vault and its time lock. He was the only one of the 4 who had not arrived that morning. Bank Vice President Derek Ellison told investigators that Cole had intended to work late the previous evening. The time lock on the vault had not been set that night. Cole often worked later in the evenings and had placed the lock on standby so he could return later and open the vault manually. Agents wondered whether Cole had in fact returned to the bank that evening. The sheriff drove to Cole's house across the border in Arkansas. No one was home and his red pickup truck was gone. Cole's absence alarmed investigators. They could not help but wonder what role the banker had played in the robbery. Within hours, word of the crime spread throughout the stunned community. Noel was a quiet town whose main industry was a poultry processing plant, along with small shops and local merchants. Tourism came in the summertime with the rivers, but it was essentially an average small town where crimes like this simply did not happen. Reports of the heist and the missing bank president filled local news. Investigators received many calls from residents offering help. One call from an employee at a manufacturing plant just outside town gave investigators their first real break. The man reported seeing a red pickup truck abandoned in the factory parking lot. The truck was registered to Raymond Cole. Investigators found coin wrappers strewn across the truck bed. The truck was dusted for fingerprints, but only Cole's were identified. The discovery gave lead case agent Marcus Delaney, a 19-year FBI veteran, several scenarios to pursue. At the end of the first day, agents were not sure whether they were dealing with an abducted banker or whether Cole had absconded with the money. Stops were placed on his credit cards. Airports and rental car agencies were checked. Primarily, however, they were looking for his body, alive or dead, in the immediate area around Noel. With Cole still missing, investigators secured a search warrant for the bank president's house. Inside, all was quiet. In the kitchen, they discovered an overturned trash can, suggesting a possible struggle. They searched every room. By the bed, they found Cole's glasses on the nightstand. He never went anywhere without them. It appeared the banker had left in a hurry. Still, it was impossible to determine from the search alone whether he had fled or been abducted. With no sign of Cole, agents canvassed his neighborhood. One neighbor, Linda Hawthorne, recalled seeing several vehicles pulling into Cole's driveway late that night. Headlights came in, and roughly 15 or 20 minutes later, they left. Assistant U.S. Attorney Tyler Grant, who was involved early in the investigation, later said Hawthorne's statement was critical because it gave investigators their first solid time frame. McDonald County Sheriff Roy Pritchard coordinated the massive search for the banker in the area surrounding Knoll. A command post was set up on the west side of town. Search parties were assigned roads to walk. Highway Patrol brought in a helicopter, and planes assisted from the air. Teams searched from both the air and the ground, beginning at the location where Cole's truck had been found and moving outward in widening circles. After days of searching, there was still no trace of the bank president. As the hunt expanded, Delaney and 22 agents from the Kansas City office formed a task force with local law enforcement. To house the large number of personnel, the FBI set up headquarters at the local armory. While they worked, leads continued pouring in from concerned residents. One tip came from local truck driver Earl Whitaker. Having heard about the heist, Whitaker told an agent what he had seen on a road in Noel in the early morning hours. Returning home from work, he encountered 3 vehicles leaving town. One truck matched the description of Cole's red pickup. It was traveling with a 2-tone van. Another dark-colored truck followed Whitaker for a while before turning down a road toward neighboring Arkansas. This information aligned with Linda Hawthorne's recollection of unusual traffic outside Cole's house. Whitaker's account reinforced the time frame of the crime. Investigators also spoke with Cole's ex-wife, who had been married to him for many years. Although they had recently separated, she stressed that he had been a loving father to their 2 children. Having worked closely with him at the bank for several years, she had never witnessed any impropriety. Yet Cole remained the FBI's only suspect, and after days of searching, he was still missing. Then a couple fishing in Grand Lake, just over the state line in Oklahoma, motored to a favorite shady spot. Hoping to catch bass, they spotted what looked like a clump of seaweed floating on the water. Moving closer, they made a gruesome discovery. Just under the surface, they saw the head and arms of a submerged body. Marina employees towed it to a dock. The body was badly decomposed, but the coroner determined the man had been dead for several days. Immediately after death, bacteria began breaking down the soft tissues of the organs and releasing gaseous compounds. After several days, the gas can fill the corpse and lift a submerged body to the surface. Sheriff Roy Pritchard recalled that the bloated remains were still attached to a chain, a concrete block, and part of a chair. It was a pretty gruesome sight. A corpse will float until the skin tears and releases the gases, after which the body sinks again. If the boaters had not seen it that day, it might never have been found. The time of death was later determined to be consistent with the time frame of Raymond Cole's disappearance. The sheriff found a wallet in the victim's back pocket. Inside was a driver's license confirming the identity as Raymond Cole. The sheriff contacted the FBI. The search for the banker was over, and a homicide investigation began. With Cole's surfacing, investigators gained the knowledge of what had happened and the focus they needed to direct resources going forward. Marcus Delaney and his partner Reed Holloway rushed to the lake to conduct their own review of the body. Special Agent Holloway's first task was to preserve the evidence. The decision was made to release Cole from the chair. Investigators preserved the concrete block, the chain hoist, the chair, and the duct tape. With Cole's body freed from the death trap, the coroner removed it. The medical examiner determined the probable cause of death was drowning. The chair with the block, chain hoist, and duct tape were examined and photographed before being sent to the FBI laboratory in Washington, D.C. The task force set up a hotline and published pictures of the chair, hoping someone would come forward with information. It was clear from examining the chair and the apparatus attached to it, along with the location of Cole's body, that he had died a horrible death. All indications were that he had been conscious when he was dropped from the bridge into the water below. The hotline was inundated with calls, building a file of more than 80 suspects. According to Sheriff Roy Pritchard, one promising tip came from an anonymous caller who urged investigators to question 2 brothers, Travis and Kyle Voss. The local police dispatch had received an anonymous call saying the Voss brothers had a lot of change in their possession and a lot of change was exactly what had been taken from the bank. The FBI tracked down Travis Voss at a junkyard. The manager pointed agents to where he was working on his car. Travis said that on the night of the robbery, he had been at his girlfriend's house more than 40 miles from Noel. He was cooperative and told them he had two .45 caliber handguns, the same caliber used to shoot out the security camera. Agents asked if they could test fire the guns. Travis agreed and said the weapons were stored at his home. His younger brother Kyle would meet them there. When the agents arrived, Kyle showed them where the guns were kept. Kyle told investigators that on the night of the murder, he had been at his mother's house. After firing both guns, agents sent the shell casings to the FBI lab. Examiners later determined they did not match those found at the bank. To lead agent Marcus Delaney, it was a dead end. Both brothers had expressed willingness to help the investigation if they could. Both had alibis for the evening of the crime. Given these factors, attention was directed elsewhere. Back at Grand Lake, where Cole's body had been recovered, resident Clayton Briggs was out fishing with his son and daughter when he made a curious discovery along the shore. They came across a wooden dowel, a brace that seemed out of place. Alongside it, Briggs also found a piece of duct tape. Having seen pictures in the newspaper, he believed it might be from the chair found with Cole's body. He sent his son to fetch plastic bags so he could preserve the find. Sheriff Roy Pritchard and a partner drove to Oklahoma to question Briggs. When they asked if he had a piece of evidence, Briggs said he had found a piece of duct tape. The sheriff's first comment was, "Oh my God, is that pretty?" They were looking at a fingerprint, clear as day, made from car grease and impervious to the lake water. Although the tape contained fingerprints, that piece of evidence would not be relevant unless it could be proven to be part of the chair or the apparatus in which Cole was drowned. To prove that, FBI examiners would have to match the glue and strands from the torn piece of tape with the tape found on the chair. That process would take time. Until then, the FBI and local investigators still had no prime suspects. Wayne Peck, who had reported his chain hoist stolen, identified the one recovered from the lake as his own. He recognized damage on the pulley and said he had last seen the apparatus at Marlene Voss's house, where he had once lived. Peck agreed to take a polygraph test and passed it. On the strength of Peck's statement, Marcus Delaney decided to question the Voss family again. Driving up to their mother's house, he noticed an old van in the front yard that closely matched the description of one of the vehicles Earl Whitaker had seen the night of the bank heist. Delaney questioned Marlene Voss about the missing chain hoist, but she claimed to have no memory of it. She also corroborated Kyle's alibi, saying he had been at her house that night. Delaney left with suspicions that she knew more than she was telling. He asked the brothers to give their fingerprints, hoping to match the one found on the duct tape. Travis was cooperative. When asked about the hoist, he said he remembered seeing it at his mother's house, but did not know what had become of it. Kyle was evasive and hesitant. Delaney tried to convince Kyle that providing his fingerprints would make things easier and possibly get him out of some trouble. Kyle eventually promised to come to the station but never showed. Although Delaney had initially dismissed the Voss brothers as suspects, he noted that their memories of the chain hoist were conflicting. He decided to take a closer look at their background. Researching the family's financial records, he discovered that years earlier they had received money from an insurance settlement after their father died in a plane crash. Popular opinion was that the money was still plentiful, making them unlikely candidates for bank robbers. But Delaney learned that was not the case. While they had all received a considerable sum, Travis had spent his, their mother had spent the large portion of hers, and Kyle still had a considerable amount in a fund that was not available to him until he turned 21. Agents found that both brothers had recently purchased cars with cash, yet neither had a job. Investigators also determined that Kyle had spent thousands of dollars since the heist. Although the spending looked suspicious, Delaney still had no solid evidence linking them to the bank robbery and murder. Revisiting crime reports and witness statements, he made a new connection. Truck driver Earl Whitaker had seen 3 vehicles leaving Noel on the night of the robbery. That meant there was possibly a third suspect. If 2 of the vehicles were driven by the Voss brothers, perhaps the other was driven by one of their friends. Delaney recalled the young man he had met briefly on the Voss porch the day he questioned Kyle. Dylan Mercer had recently become Kyle's roommate. Delaney tracked him down at a junkyard. Mercer said he knew nothing about the robbery and murder, although he offered no alibi for the night in question. Delaney decided to question Kyle again, this time with a polygraph. The test was administered by a technician. A polygraph is used by investigators as a tool to rule out possible suspects. The machine monitors the subject's reactions to stress in 3 ways. Tubes fastened around the chest monitor the slightest change in respiration. Low-voltage electrodes placed on the fingers detect moisture on the skin. A cuff on the arm measures changes in blood pressure. The examination is based on the body's fight-or-flight principle. When the brain perceives a physical or psychological threat, the body responds by increasing blood pressure, heart rate, and respiration. Kyle Voss was asked about Raymond Cole, the robbery, and the murder. Did you take a chain hoist from Wesley Dunn? No. Did you kill Raymond Cole? No. Based on his physiological responses, the examiner determined that the younger Voss brother was deceptive about his knowledge of the crime. It was clear to Delaney that Kyle was somehow involved, but he would need more convincing evidence to bring charges. The Voss family members were subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury to answer questions under oath. Travis, Kyle, and Marlene each disavowed any knowledge of the bank robbery and the murder of Raymond Cole. After questioning, Kyle was once again asked to supply his fingerprints voluntarily. He agreed and set an appointment. In Washington, D.C., FBI analysts continued examining the items sent from Knoll. An examiner confirmed that the wood found by Clayton Briggs was part of the same chair to which Raymond Cole had been taped. The piece of tape with a fingerprint on it was the most promising piece of evidence. Examiners were conclusively able to link the portions of tape by matching the torn ends, the fibers, and the glue. The tape found by Briggs had 2 complete prints on it. They compared the prints to Travis Voss's, but they did not match. Delaney recalled that the fingerprint examiner notified him the prints on the tape were similar to those of Travis, but not identical. The examiner advised that the fingerprints of siblings were often similar in pattern. Therefore, obtaining the fingerprints of Kyle Voss was imperative. Although Kyle had told the grand jury he would provide his fingerprints, he never did. This time, Delaney would force compliance by serving him with a subpoena. Grudgingly, Kyle gave his prints to the FBI. Since comparing them to those found on the tape would take time, Kyle was free to go, but Agent Delaney did not remain idle. He knew Dylan Mercer was close to both brothers, and probably knew more about the crime than he had said. Delaney decided to confront him. He told Mercer that if he was innocent and had knowledge of the crime, he should cooperate. But if Mercer was knowingly protecting the Voss brothers and they were convicted of the robbery and murder, Mercer could be jailed for aiding and abetting. Worse, without a solid alibi, he remained under suspicion. Mercer revealed nothing. He remained faithful to the brothers. Delaney thought perhaps Mercer was hiding his own guilt with his silence. Delaney pursued the 2 brothers as the prime suspects. Travis's fingerprints had been compared to the 2 found on the duct tape. They did not match. As investigators waited for results on a comparison with Kyle's prints, additional partial prints were discovered on the tape. Now the FBI needed new prints from Kyle, but he was nowhere to be found. Finally, hoping to clear his name, Dylan Mercer contacted Delaney wanting to talk. Investigators told him they thought he had helped commit the bank robbery and murder with the Voss brothers. Mercer claimed he had nothing to do with that crime. However, he did admit involvement in another, more recent incident. On one particular evening, Travis and Kyle Voss broke into a house in Missouri and stole several rifles. The brothers rendezvoused with Mercer later that evening. The next day, Mercer and Kyle drove across the state line into Arkansas and sold the guns. It was a federal violation. Mercer also recalled another time when the brothers tried to convince him to participate in a more violent crime. Sheriff Roy Pritchard remembered how the Voss brothers tried to recruit Mercer. They told him they were not doing any more small-time stuff. They were going to hit a place where there would probably be some shooting because there were armed guards. If Mercer did not really want to kill somebody, he had better let them take him back home. Mercer told them he did not want to be involved in something like that, so they turned around and took him home. By cooperating with the FBI, Mercer made a deal for his role in the illegal sale of the firearms and was placed on probation. He was also finally dismissed as a third suspect after passing a lie detector test 3 times. With the help of Mercer's statement, Delaney issued a federal warrant for Kyle Voss on charges of transporting and selling firearms across state lines. Travis was not charged in that case. Authorities tracked Kyle down in a small town in Arkansas several months later. When apprehended, police searched his vehicle and found several bags of nickels in the trunk. Kyle was turned over to authorities in Missouri and booked. While being processed, Delaney acquired the set of Kyle's fingerprints examiners had been waiting for. The FBI lab needed front and back views of his prints, hoping to match 2 partial prints found on the duct tape used in the murder of Raymond Cole. While Kyle was behind bars, agents monitored recorded prison conversations between him and his family. According to Assistant U.S. Attorney Tyler Grant, one call was particularly incriminating. Kyle was asking Travis whether authorities would be able to make a case against him, and Travis indicated they would not be able to put him at the scene. Then Delaney finally received the results from the lab. Those fingerprints turned out to be Kyle Voss's. The tape was determined to have come from the chair in which Raymond Cole was bound. Therefore, that piece of tape became one of the most important pieces of evidence in the case. Tyler Grant now had a strong case against Kyle. Prosecutors were going to proceed against Kyle once they had those first 2 fingerprints, and the main focus shifted to building a case against Travis. Finding evidence against Travis was difficult. Nothing directly linked him to the crime. Once again, Delaney combed through financial records. He attempted to determine all of Travis's cash transactions and found that Travis had spent a significant amount of cash in the months following the robbery. During that time, he was unemployed and had no logical explanation for having that much cash. Scrutinizing Travis's phone records, Delaney made another important discovery. Travis had made several long-distance calls to his girlfriend at her home during the very days leading up to and after the robbery. The calls destroyed his alibi. Travis had stated that he was with her the entire time. Agents called Dylan Mercer in for additional questioning, hoping he could shed more light on Travis's involvement. Mercer told them about a conversation he had with both Voss brothers at Walt Hensley's junkyard. The 3 of them were working on a car when Hensley announced that the banker was there to pick up his car. That apparently generated a comment from Travis that what the 3 of them ought to do was follow the banker, follow him home, grab him, kidnap him, and force him to take them to the bank and open the vault. At the time, Mercer agreed it might be an easy way to get rich. The plan sounded eerily like what had happened to Raymond Cole. It was now clear to the FBI that the brothers had the knowledge, motive, and opportunity to pull off the homicide and heist. Based on the accumulating evidence, Travis Voss was arrested long after the horrifying murder. Both brothers were indicted on 3 federal counts relating to the bank robbery and murder. Almost 3 years after the bank heist and brutal murder, Agent Marcus Delaney handed prosecutors all the evidence the task force had amassed. They were determined to prove beyond any doubt that the brothers had committed the crime. Through painstaking investigation, agents and prosecutors reconstructed what had happened. Travis Voss, needing information about the state bank's floor plan, had opened a safe deposit box a few weeks before the crime. Bank Vice President Derek Ellison told investigators that Travis had been particularly interested in Raymond Cole as well. He made a point of asking who Cole was and where he lived. Returning home, Travis drew floor plans to the bank and plotted the crime with Kyle. They decided to do the job before sunrise, so there would be no witnesses. To get into the vault, they needed someone who had the keys and knew the combination. For that, they would abduct Raymond Cole, the bank president, and force him to open the vault. Afterward, they needed to make sure he would never talk. They thought it would be easy money. Life would be good with their new fortunes. In the early hours, Travis and Kyle Voss put their plan into motion. Acting as lookout was an unidentified accomplice who drove a dark-colored pickup truck. It was the same vehicle neighbor Linda Hawthorne had recalled seeing around Cole's house. The brothers loaded their mother's brown and tan van with the equipment they would need. They arrived at Raymond Cole's house. Eventually, he awoke from a deep sleep. The intruders would be the last people he ever saw. Cole tried to flee. But he had no chance against the brothers and their accomplice. They threatened to kill him unless he turned over his keys to the bank. Silencing him, they dragged Cole outside. The terror continued as he was stuffed into the front seat of the van. Each criminal drove one of the vehicles, including Cole's red pickup, as they sped off for the bank. The Voss brothers and their accomplice pulled up to the bank, only a short drive from Cole's house. With their captive in tow, the robbers quickly opened the bank's front door and ran inside. No alarms sounded because Cole had neglected to set them. After ripping the duct tape off his mouth, they pulled Cole over to his desk and retrieved the keys to the safe. Then they forced him to provide the vault's combination. Once inside, they grabbed all that was in reach. They dashed away, dumping the loot in the truck. Afraid for his life, Cole complied with their every demand, but the assailants pistol-whipped him and knocked him out. On the way out of Noel, Earl Whitaker crossed paths with the brothers. After he passed the intersection, the three vehicles sped off, the first two heading toward Grand Lake. Reaching the lake, the two remaining vehicles stopped along the high point of the bridge. Here, Kyle and the unknown accomplice prepared to kill Cole by drowning him. In his haste, Kyle took off his gloves to secure a portion of the tape and unknowingly left greasy fingerprints behind. Then the two attached the stolen chain hoist. When they finished, they lifted Cole above the lake and plunged him into the black water below. At the first trial, the evidence was strong enough to persuade a jury to convict Travis and Kyle Voss of 3 federal crimes relating to the robbery, abduction, and use of firearms during the illegal acts. In the state trial, only Kyle was found guilty of murder. Though the unidentified accomplice was never found, it was determined that the Voss brothers were the masterminds and principal perpetrators of the crime. No charges were brought against their mother, Marlene. Without doubt, this was one of the most difficult investigations Marcus Delaney had been involved in during his long career. It was an unusually heinous crime. Today, Travis and Kyle Voss are serving life sentences with no chance of parole. For his cooperation, Dylan Mercer served the remainder of his firearms charge on probation. Noel has returned to normal. A violent chapter in its history is now closed. Yet because of the crimes of these blood brothers, it will never be the same quiet, innocent place it once was.